Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my tight end start or sit decisions for week number 7 of the 2024 fantasy football season. But before we can break down every single game from Thursday Night Football all the way up until the doubleheader on Monday Night Football in terms of the tight end position, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 7 tight end start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Denver Broncos at the New Orleans Saints tonight, and in this matchup, I have zero interest in any of these tight ends. Juwan Johnson is in a room with multiple tight ends. Now, Taysom Hill is not going to play tonight, so it's going to be a double-headed tight end room with him and Foster Moreau, and they are going to operate as the tight end 1A and the tight end 1B in the Saints offense. Now, without Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, we could see either one of these guys end up having a halfway decent game, but ultimately, with it being such a large guessing game, the smart move in this scenario is to avoid the tight ends on the Saints. Same thing goes with the Broncos. Now, Lucas Kroll has become the lead tight end on the team as Greg Dulcich has been sent to Azkaban for being so incredibly bad. Kroll had 4 targets last week, and even with Bo Nix looking solid, I just have zero interest in playing a tight end that I don't even think will see more than 2 targets in this spot. Next up, we move to London with the New England Patriots at the Jacksonville Jaguars, a much more exciting game in terms of tight ends, with Drake May under center and up against a defense that I wouldn't wipe my ass with. I do believe that Hunter Henry should have a solid showing. He feels like the second best receiving option on this team behind Demario Douglas. Last week, he had 3 receptions on 5 targets for 41 yards and a touchdown up against Houston as the tight end number 7. So I got Hunter Henry as a low-end tight end 1 on the week in that tight end 9 through 12 range. Evan Ingram, we really haven't seen a lot of him this season as the guy missed weeks 2 through 5 with an injury, but when he returned last week, he came back in a big way. 10 receptions on 10 targets for 102 yards as the tight end number 3. Even with the clear dysfunction that surrounds the Jacksonville Jaguars organization, and the defense is awful, the offense isn't all that hot either, but Trevor Lawrence does love feeding the ball to Ingram, so I expect Ingram to continue to put up top 8 performances, and I got him inside of the top 5 this week, especially since I do believe that while on paper this might not be projected to be the highest scoring game on the week with how bad the Jaguars defense is and with how good Drake May looked, I think Drake May could be dicking down the Jaguars defense, and that leads to a lot more passing the ball late, which will lead to more targets for Evan Ingram. Now we move to the beginning of the 1 p.m. slate on Sunday. We got the Seattle Seahawks at the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Kyle Pitts is basically that abusive ex that you just keep going back to, knowing damn well the same exact thing is going to happen yet again, and the scenario is probably going to end how it did last time, though he has been showing a lot more promise as of recently and has racked up back-to-back 10-plus point performances in PPR with a top 6 showing in prime time back in week number 5, 70 or more yards in back-to-back games. It has me feeling nicey about Kyle Pitts, and I got him as a top 8 tight end. Noah Fant has been boom or bust this season. He's had 2 games inside of the top 8 and 4 games ranked outside the top 25. So either he is an incredibly useful asset to your team or a complete and utter unmitigated disaster getting you like 2 or 3 fantasy points. And this is largely due to the fact that the targets are very unreliable. In games with 6 or more targets, that is where the big performances have come. But with most games being around 3 or fewer targets, I don't have much confidence in Fant on a team with so many other weapons. Fant is basically stuck in the cuck chair, and he is a clear sit. Next up, we move to the Tennessee Titans at the no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Now, Chig Okonkwo just never does anything. It really is as easy as that. When Will Levis, the mailman himself, can't hit Chig if Chig was standing within 2 feet in front of his face, And when the offense moves at the pace that old people fuck, there is just zero interest in my mind that you should be playing Chig Okonkwo if guys like DeAndre Hopkins or Calvin Ridley can't get it done. What makes you think a tight end that's relatively mid like Chig can actually do so? Now, Dalton Kincaid has logged a limited practice yesterday on Wednesday with a collarbone injury. It is important to monitor this situation as that could lead to you potentially throwing a flyer on starting Dawson Knox one time if you're with me. If you have Dalton Kincaid, Kincaid has received 6 or more targets in 3 straight games, and against the Tennessee defense, if he does suit up, I got him in that top 8 range. Amari Cooper could play in this game. He might not play. Regardless, though, Kincaid is still going to get his targets. Next up, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. For the Cincinnati Bengals, Mike Likiamagasiki has had his snaps lessened as the season has prolonged due to the rise of Eric All. So if you had to start one of them, gun to the head, who's going to score more fantasy points? My lean would be with Eric All, who had 2 receptions on 3 targets for 10 yards last week in primetime in MetLife. I like Eric All, but I just don't have a lot of confidence in a guy who's probably just going to get around 2 or 3 targets, so he would be a sit for me. David Njoku without Amari Cooper, he is going to see a shit ton of targets. He had 7 targets last week with 5 receptions for 31 yards, but, and this is a big but, shout out to Violet Myers, with Watson being as bad as he is, it's very hard to get excited about Njoku, regardless of how good you think Njoku is, right? And how fun the upside of Njoku might be with how high the amount of targets could be. Watson really puts the dagger into his back, because if Jameis was in there, like swimwear, we would be ecstatic to start David Njoku. But with Deshaun Watson, he's more of a low-end tight end 1 to high-end tight end number 2, and he is being carried heavily by the amount of volume he should receive. Next up, we got the Houston Texans at the Green Bay Packers. For the Texans, we have Dalton Schultz. Now, without Nico Collins, his targets have been coming at a much more rapid rate. Last week, he had 8 targets that turned into 4 receptions for 27 yards, with him getting around 5 to 6 targets per week on an offense that could hit the Packers with the sweet chin music. I like his upside as a high-end tight end number 2. Again, the safety isn't really there, but the upside definitely is. Tucker Kraft Mac and Cheese was on an absolute heater from weeks 4 through 5 with back-to-back games like the cover of Lethal Weapon as the tight end number 1. Though he plummeted off the edge of the earth like what Christopher Columbus believed would happen if you sailed too far. Tight end 31 last week in a great spot up against the Cardinals, but he still played 80+% of the snaps, so one down game won't really have me running away with my pants around my ankles panicking about Tucker Kraft. If you picked him up, you could definitely rock with him yet again this week up against a Texans defense that, sure, while they are good, this could lead to a very high scoring affair. I got Kraft ranked strongly inside of the top 10. Next up, we move to the Miami Dolphins at the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Janu Smith and Jalen Waddle both locked in with Tyler Huntley over the bye week in practice together. Now, this could lead to Janu Smith being one of Huntley's favorite targets this week in a beautiful spot up against the Colts defense. But even with the momentum that Janu is riding, coming off a 5-reception game prior to the bye up against the Patriots where he had 62 yards, I just don't want to be taking out multiple bets on the Dolphins offense without Tua. Janu is close to being a start. If you want to make the argument for him, I would definitely understand. But for me, that's a no for me, dog. Next up, we got Mo Alley, Mo Cox, Mo Money, Mo Cox, Mo Alley Cox with Joe Flacco. Mo Alley Cox has been doing great. Back-to-back games inside of the top 12 and more targets that he has seen in a fortnight. But with Anthony Richardson back on the saddle as the team's lead signal caller, you would be foolish to start Mo Alley Cox because you know the targets are going in the opposite direction. Next up, we got the Detroit Lions at the cold like Minnesota Vikings. Now, For the Vikings, Hawkinson logged a limited practice on Wednesday, and his 21-day practice window to return from IR is currently open. From everything I have read, though, across the internet, I've combed the internet like the desert in Spaceballs, and what I have found is that he's probably more than likely 0.011111% chance that he ends up playing in this game, and it's more than likely that he suits up next week or the week after. That will lead to Johnny Munt being the tight end number 1 with just about 2 targets in most games and averaging less than 15 yards in most games. There is zero thought in my mind to start Johnny Munt, even with how good the Vikings offense is. For Sam Darnold, in a game last week where the Lions had the Cowboys fans around the globe crying themselves to sleep, right? In a game where the Lions dominated from start to finish. There was not a singular point in that game where you were like, oh, the Cowboys are going to come back, right? The Cowboys were finished dead on arrival. And in that game, Laporta only had 1 target. But he took that target to the cribbo for 52 yards. Now, Laporta has fallen down the totem pole in terms of tight ends in fantasy football, but he is incredibly talented, so I'm going to have to continue to rank him inside the top 10 due to the upside of the offense and how they could just score a shit ton of points in any given game. Next up, we got the Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Football Giants, but before we break down this game at the tight end position, as well as the rest of the games through the doubleheader on Monday Night Football, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you'll be able to claim your free pick, which tonight is Bo Nix higher than half a total yard. You match that with any of the players on the Saints or any of the players playing on Sunday or Monday, and you will receive 3 times what you put into your pick'em. If you put in multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher. Not only do you get that free pick, but you'll also receive a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash if you sign up using promo code Notorious. Now, I know what you might be thinking, Nick, I'm watching this on Friday. I'm watching this during Thursday Night Football. It's Saturday. It's Sunday. What happens now? Because Bo Nix has already played. Well, if you sign up using promo code Notorious, you'll just receive a different player higher than half of a total yard. So make sure you guys check that out. Link in the video description or by using promo code Notorious to claim your free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So back on into things here. We got the Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants. Now, the Giants, with Neighbors back into the fold, any momentum that Theo Johnson has gathered over the last 2 weeks, seeing a strong increase in targets, will be completely and utterly demolished. The skill set is definitely there, but he's a guy that only sees about a target or 2 a week when Neighbors and Wandale are having a fucking 5-star feast at a cornucopia, so there's really no argument to be made to actually play him. Grant Calcaterra is going to be the starting tight end for the Eagles. Goddard suffered a hamstring injury last week and is reportedly week to week right now, which basically means he is fucked in terms of playing on Sunday. That throws Calcaterra into the lead spot. After Goddard was injured, we saw him last week go 4 for 4 like he was at Wendy's for 67 yards as the tight end 12. I would be lying if I said I was super excited to start him. I'm not going to sit here and give the gawk 9,000 special to him because they have A.J. Brown, they have Devontae Smith, they have Saquon Barkley in a revenge game, so they don't really need Grant Calcaterra. They don't really need to force feed him the rock. But on an Eagles offense that can put the pedal to the metal here, I think he's a fine, high upside, lower end start, so he's in that tight end 2 range. Next up, we move into matchup numero 10 with the Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Rams, the beginning of the 4 p.m. slate. Big Cock Brock has been dropping it down on defenses weekly, 4 of 6 games inside the top 5. And with Devontae Adams eating Taco Bell with Aaron Rodgers back in New Jersey, Purdy is the best wide receiver on this team. 10 or more targets in back-to-back games, and last week he had 9 receptions on those 10 targets for 71 yards. Facing a Rams defense that has more holes than the plot of Game of Thrones as you got deeper and deeper into the seasons, I expect Bowers to put the Rams in a sleeper hold here as a top five tight end on the week. Colby Parkinson is one of those bottom of the barrel starts. Now, Cooper Kupp potentially making his return could lead to the offense moving the ball more effectively. But ultimately, we know who Kobe Parkinson is, and we know how this team maneuvers. When they get into the red zone, they're giving the rock to Kyren Williams. It doesn't matter where they are, they're giving him the ball. If they're on the goal line and he doesn't get on try 1, they go again. If he doesn't get on try 2, they go again 3rd time. If he doesn't get on try number 3, they're going a 4th time. If they could go 5 times in a row, they would go 5 times in a row. They're going to give the ball to Kyren in the red zone. But with Kupp now out there, that could lead to, even if they don't give a lot of red zone opportunities to Parkinson, maybe he could fall ass backwards into the end zone now. He has had back-to-back weeks with 7 or more targets, and the motherfucker had 13 last week, which turned into 7 receptions for 52 yards. Again, the touchdown upside isn't really there. But when push comes to shove, there are far worse options than Parkinson, who should see a decent amount of volume. I got him in that tight end 16 to 18 range. Next up, we move to the Carolina Panthers at the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders. Now, Jatavion Colonel Sanders had his best game this season inside of the top 18 at the position last week. But with him being a 2-target guy most weeks, and him magically having 7 targets last week against Atlanta has me thinking that he is a one-hit wonder like the guys that sing Take On Me. Everyone knows that song, right? I will be avoiding the trap that is Jatavion Sanders. For the Commanders, Ertz feels like a safe bet to be a top 18 tight end. While finishing as the tight end 18, 17, 16 in that range is definitely far from fruitful, you get about 8 to 10 points every single week at a position that is incredibly volatile, so it really isn't the worst, right? If your wide receiver 2 gets you 8 to 10 points, it feels like you just got fucked in the ass without the use of lube, but if your tight end does it, it's a lot better, right? Last week, he was the tight end 11 in Baltimore with 4 receptions on 5 targets for 68 yards, one off of being very nice with 69 yards. I like. If he gets his typical 4 to 5 targets a game, he'll be a fine low-end tight end 1 to high-end tight end number 2. Next up, we got the Kansas City Chiefs at the San Francisco 49ers in a Super Bowl rematch. Now, George Kittle has been amazing, right? It's been a tale of 2 seasons for Kelsey. There's been the pre-Rashee Rice era injury and the post-Rashee Rice injury era, right? Where prior to the injury, Kittle wasn't doing jack. Not Kittle. Kittle's been doing great all season. Kelsey hasn't done diddly squat, but then after the injury, he's been amazing. For Kittle, this man has been the definition of consistency. 5 games played with 5 games inside the top 10 and 4 games inside of the top 4. Kittle has 5 touchdowns on the year, and against the Chiefs, I expect him to get dirty yet again and finish inside of the top 3. Now, Travis Kelce without Rashee Rice in the kitchen, Kelce has been back to being Travis Kelce. 9 or more targets in back-to-back weeks, leading to back-to-back top 5 showings. Prior to the bye week up against the Saints in New Orleans, he had, or maybe the game was in Kansas City. I didn't write that down, so actually I don't remember. Point doesn't fucking matter, though. Up against the Saints, he had 9 receptions on 10 targets for 70 yards in prime time. If he can find the end zone this week, which he hasn't done yet this season, I got him as a stone cold lock to be the tight end 1 if he scores a touchdown. Now, if he doesn't score the touchdown, he should still be a top 3 tight end. So very nice. Either way, I love Kelce and Kittle this week. If you had them ranked as the tight end 1 and 2, that makes a lot of sense. Next up, we move to, cause you waited all day for Sunday night, the New York Jets at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, with Adams cruising down the street in his 6'4", down to New Jersey, it is basically over for Tyler Conklin. Now we know Aaron Rodgers loves a nice tight end, and honestly, who doesn't? But the targets are more than likely going to dip. My interest level is falling on Tyler Conklin like the sky does in Chicken Little. If I expanded the start-worthy tight end range by a couple of tight ends, then he would be a start. But that's not the scenario we live in, so he's a sit up against a solid Pittsburgh Steelers defense. For Freiermuth, he was seeing 4 or more targets in 4 straight games to come out the season. And now, back-to-back games with just 3. He is still a great red zone. He's a great red zone threat. He's a great red zone threat, but with a quarterback change potentially occurring, or with them potentially using a 2-quarterback system, Freiermuth is a low-end tight end to start. Next up, we move to the first of dose Monday Night Football games. Baltimore Ravens at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Otten is certainly a risky bet weekly, as he is in an offense that is littered with talent. Even if you want to say the running back room is absolutely disgusting, as it gets for fantasy, they have 3 guys that are getting touches. They have one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and that leads to tight end Cade Otton being relatively hit or miss because the targets aren't always going to be there. Though, it is important to note that he has seen a solid bump in targets over the last few weeks, with 4 or more in all games and 6 or more in 3 of the last 4 games. Up against the Ravens in a spot where this could really be a high-scoring game or the highest-scoring game of the week, I think Otten feels fine as a solid tight end number 2. Mark Andrews has finally started to see targets in this offense. He has had back-to-back weeks with 4 or more, and last week he found the end zone up against Washington as the tight end number 6. Due to the fact that this team uses more tight ends than a Brazzers shoot, I still can't get fully on board with ranking him as a must-start tight end, but he is a low-end tight end one for me because, again, I don't want to pull the wool over my eyes and say, hey, after 2 decent games, Mark Andrews is back, but I'm starting to feel a little bit more confident in him. Isaiah Likely, in any given game, he could literally be the number 1 tight end on this team in points and the number 1 tight end in fantasy football. Week 1 up against the Chiefs, the guy put belt to ass. In week 5 up against the Bengals, he had 2 touchdowns. But with the emergence of old man Andrews back reinvigorated into the offense, I am just not gonna sit here and pretend like Likely is a guy you want in your lineup. Again, the upside's there, but no one's going to sit here and pretend like we need Likely in our lineups. Final game here. The final game on Monday night. The Los Angeles Chargers at the Arizona Cardinals. Now, we talk about this every single week with the Chargers. Now, Disley's been seeing more snaps without Hayden Hurst. But this is an offense that wants to pound the fuck out of the rock. They want to run like it's the last thing they do with Jim Harbaugh. They aren't interested in throwing a ton unless they're down by a bunch. And here up against the Cardinals, I don't really see their back being pushed fully up against the wall to where they have to throw a ton. So Will Disley goes down the gutter. For Trey McBride, when he plays, you play him. You don't need a rocket scientist to tell you that. Even with the up and down nature of the Cardinals offense, McBride has had 6 or more targets in all 5 games that he has played, and he has had 8 or more targets in 3 of 5 games. While the Chargers defense is definitely rock solid, there is no need to panic at all. I would lock in Trey McBride as a top 5 tight end on the weeks. Thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. If you want to check out my Patreon, link in the video description. I answer all questions on there, and I also release my rankings. Make sure you guys do check out Underdog, promo code Notorious to get your free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I love you guys more than you will ever know. Hope you guys have a great one, and as always, good boy!